Hello! I was wondering if I might trouble you for a cup of strong black coffee, and in the process engage you with an anecdote of no small amusement.
Hello, nerds and herds and peoples and sheeples and just whoever happens to be tuning into the madness. I am just John.
And I'm a sheep, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know. We still don't have an intro for this.
Beep, beep.
But welcome to whatever this is, because we don't know what it is without an intro. But I think it is NerdyVerse.
I've been told.
Yes.
I've heard it both ways.
We are Nerd Herder, but we have a series called NerdyVerse. It's not confusing at all. And essentially, this is where we talk about everything not Star Wars. For the past few weeks, we have been discussing Halo on the NerdyVerse series. We have our Star Wars show where we talk about all things Star Wars. We've been talking about The Mandalorian and enjoying that. But here we've been talking about Halo because it's something I love, and yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's that's kind of the point of everything we talk about.
Yeah.
But
we enjoy things. Right.
So but I wanted to approach Halo from a different perspective because I wanted to talk about all the things people probably don't know about Halo, particularly everything that doesn't happen in the games. We have not talked at all about the video games.
Not yet.
You have, like, there's so much you can talk about that's not video games when it comes to Halo, and a lot of people don't know, or some people know but have never checked it out. And so the deep dive was meant to be that, hey, here's all the stuff you're missing out. And I am in no way completely covering everything. I mean, there's still plenty of reason to read stuff and whatnot. Plenty of reason to still play the games even. But hopefully those tuning in are at least enjoying the craziness that it is. I mean, there's a lot of very interesting lore that has a lot more to do with everything else other than just a man in green tank armor punching aliens in the face. Like,
although that is the fun part.
That is the fun part, but it's like this much of Halo. It's like tiny bit. So this is also our second time doing a new episode. If you're watching on YouTube or if you've checked it out on YouTube, you'll see we've changed things up with that. So you can see us now, and that means when we have visual aids, which will be a part of this episode, you can see that, but we're also going to describe them just as I have normally been.
Yeah.
You'll just have the option of, if we do a horrible job and you really just need to know what the heck we're talking about, you can check it out on YouTube. If you want to be awesome, watch it on YouTube and listen to it on your favorite podcast. Double down.
I do wonder, are there people out there who will be slightly upset that our lights on either side are just a touch out of sync?
They sync up if given enough time.
Yeah.
Like if anything, that's a reason to watch the entire show, because by the end of it, I'm pretty sure they'll be synced. They get closer and closer every time. So, but no, you can assume what colors are flashing behind us if you're listening to this. Again, we're not trying to win anybody to a side. We're just doing our thing, and however you can consume it is completely up to you. But yeah.
Although, if you do not tune in, you will not know how many Jason figures I have up there.
I will say that we don't have ads on YouTube. We do have ads on our podcast. And every time you listen to one of those ads, that's money for us. So there's benefits to both and whatnot, but however you choose to support the show, we support you. I mean, it is what it is.
Mutual support.
Yes. So, but yeah, so the first episode of this deep dive, we talked about everything no one ever thought had anything to do with Halo, and that's like the creation.
Mm-hmm.
And then last week we talked about, okay, what happens after a period of creation when the Halo is fired. And that's more of what we're dealing with in the modern take and everything. And so I was very interested, just to make sure you've been paying attention, to put you on the spot. And I just thought it'd be interesting to hear from you, from everything you've been hearing and consuming and everything, your take on what is Halo lore, what is Halo history, what's the main bits of what we've been talking about.
Halo lore is complicated.
It's
It's very complicated.
Very.
Is what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning,
Was the cube. Oh no, that's 2D mini. Dang it, that's still bad.
It is bad.
Never mind. I was gonna do an Optimus Prime, but there's not a vocalizer for that one.
In the beginning was the cube, and the cube was Optimus Prime, and the cube was with Optimus Prime.
Not even a little bit, but I see what you're going for.
Exactly, because I read the Bible.
Right.
So basically, there were folks before the Forerunners that were like, it'd be dope. We're gonna make some stuff. And they made, like, some stuff.
Yeah.
And then the Forerunners were like, that's cool stuff. What if I made that?
Okay.
Basically.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the Forerunners were like, I made this.
Essentially, I mean, that's what it turned into over so many years passing by. But, yeah, at one point they were just like, yeah, no, we inherited this.
It's mine.
It's mine.
This is the mantle of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
which
did it.
It's not a tangible thing. It's just this it's this sort of charged moral code of, if you are better and if you are the transcended, like if you've gotten to a certain point, you are now responsible for everything else because you are on a different level. It's actually kind of selfless in a way, but it's actually the source of a lot of selfish actions and behaviors and whatnot.
And then there was a dude named the Didact.
Mm-hmm.
And the Didact made some choices.
Yes.
And he created some AIs.
Yes.
And then they put him in a box.
Yes.
Okay.
Why did he make those choices?
Because he thought that the humans were stinky.
Yes. That was a part of it. I mean, that was his thing initially. Before I didn't bring out the visual, so you might that might not be prompting it. But before the flood showed up, it was all about hating humans.
Yes.
You can go ahead and you have to describe him for those listening, because not everybody's seeing this.
Well, he's dabbing for one thing.
Yes.
I did as much of a dab as I could, but he looks like a mix between a Skeksis and Mr. Freeze.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I mean, if it makes sense to you, it makes sense.
He had some dope armor. Oh no, now he's Sig Heiling, can't do that.
And so, for point of reference, he's not just
he's a big boy.
Foreigners are very big. I don't know what it is, because Prometheus, Ridley Scott does the same with his stuff. The engineers are tall. They're 7 foot tall. They're physically at their peak and everything. It's this idea of Adonisness.
Well, there's an idea that human beings used to be a lot taller. Adam and Eve were supposedly 7 feet tall in some conspiracy theories, but I don't remember the exact
Humans
reason.
are getting shorter. We're both examples of that.
I'm 5'3". That is all I will say. No outlaw terrifies me.
So
Didact was put into a box.
He's put in time out because he couldn't handle the pressure.
But his AI was still out there.
An imprint of him on another Forerunner. So I didn't really get into it much in the thing, but essentially, only when Forerunners reach a certain point of maturity, and by maturity I basically mean they force evolution. So Forerunners advanced so much because they basically jump-started evolution at different points in their existence. So whereas we're it's puberty, where that's not really evolution, that's really just you growing. Basically they shock you into evolving. And so, yeah. So once you've evolved and matured to a certain point, you can access the domain. That was not something that everyone could do.
Remember that part.
And the only reason certain evolved Forerunners could do it was because precursors could do it, who were very, 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 very evolved.
That's the one I was looking for.
So basically what he did was, in order for this other Forerunner kid that he'd met to be able to access the domain, he forced maturity on him forced evolution on him, and in the process also imparted a part of his consciousness.
We call that the elder sibling complex.
Right. So imagine if every time you put a USB in a computer and accessed it, you're not accessing what was put in the USB, you're accessing what the USB remembers. That's kind of like what accessing the domain is, and that's why it contains literally all knowledge, because every time you plug into it, it's not that you're necessarily adding your knowledge, it's that everything you know the domain remembers. So it's like walk into a room,
okay,
everything that is you consciously is there.
That's a lot.
And then you leave the room, but everything of you consciously is still in the room.
And then you walk in a room and you're like, what is with all these cat videos?
That's the domain. And so that's called an imprint. And so essentially what the Didact did an imprint on him that basically passed his consciousness to him. So he was still himself. So it's like I'm still John, but I have another consciousness in me. Everything the Didact knows, I know. Everything he remembers, I remember. Like, yeah, it's like, and that's what's so big about the Forerunner books, the Forerunner trilogy of books, is they are big sci-fi. They are very elevated sci-fi stuff. I mean, they are very different than everything else Halo, for sure. So, but anyway, so that's essentially how that double Didact situation happened. Was basically kind of him just saying, all right, I'm going to let you access the domain, but I'm also going to give a part of me to you. And so when the actual Didact gets put in prison, they basically look at him and the new kid, and they're like, well, he's got the Didact, and the Didact's pretty cool. He's just kind of crazy. So maybe this one won't be crazy. And he wasn't, thankfully.
Thankfully. And then he made a friend.
He made two friends.
He made two friends that he had some lovely Horizon moments with.
Yes.
And then the friend went on the ship and had, like, some dope dialogue.
One of the humans he befriended was fatally wounded. Yes. And was turned into an AI consensually.
And his name was Millicent Bystander.
No. His name was Chakas. He was turned into a monitor.
Razor, yes.
And the monitor was called Guilty Spark.
Right. Okay, I remember that, because he fired the Halo.
Yes. Right. He was the first Halo to activate. Mendicant Bias is the first Forerunner AI. So he's when war starts breaking out, Mendicant Bias is the one they make to basically be able to keep up with everything. So rather than have a war room full of Forerunners all doing different things, they basically built an AI that could do what several Forerunners could do, was hyper intelligent, could analyze faster than they could, all of that stuff.
I'm thankful that you speak my language and you understand what I'm getting at, even when I don't.
Right. So Mendicant was created. He helped until the Flood convinced him that Forerunners were bad, and then he betrayed the Forerunners, but he was eventually captured and imprisoned on the Ark. And I mention it every time because I love it. He was given the task of contemplating atonement. Like, I love that as a punishment, because he's an AI. He's never going to die. That means he's constantly running through the cycles of contemplation.
It's like the story that really depressing story that I made you listen to. I have no mouth and I must scream.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah, I mean, you trap them in a logic loop, essentially, because he'll never completely understand atonement. Although he does try, when we fast forward to the Covenant days, which I'm going to push us ahead to just for the sake of time, he's reawoken, and he actually almost puts an end to the war by telling the Covenant hierarchy, hey, it's all fake.
One of these.
Yes.
This is
you can use
Sally
the human,
Hansen.
You can use the human names if you remember them. So, like, they have species names, but then they have what the humans call them. Which is also kind of rude. Ask your aliens their pronouns and such.
Yeah, actually. Like, we always just sort of assume.
Right.
Like,
I mean, do not assume. Space. I mean, it's like, that's actually super duper rude.
Why do you need to know about the alien genitalia. Like, seriously.
Well,
calm down.
When I say pronouns, I mean more so like ask them what they are.
Exactly.
Don't be like, ew, alien, or oh, it runs around like a gorilla. Let's just call it that. Like, no, excuse me, I have thousands of years of history amongst my people.
That is a hyper intelligent being. They built Godzilla. I mean,
exactly.
Look at
Good
that.
reference.
Thank you.
So,
this is Kyle. It's a vulture with a crown on. Like,
yeah. I mean, I kind of always
remember.
describe them as like a very disgusting version of E.T. Because they very much look like that with a long neck and wide head and
it's smacking me.
Everything. Yeah, I mean, kind of. Again, long neck, but they're the prophets. So they're the
prophets.
They're the hierarchy because they're the first ones that are basically like, hey, we should worship forerunners. And they basically rope everyone else into doing it. So Mitigate Bias tells them it's fake, and they're basically like,
no.
Cool story, bro. And just shut them down and move on with their efforts in destroying humanity.
Which is efficient.
Yes.
I feel like the church has done that before.
Ooh.
Honestly.
So as far as the Covenant Church,
yes.
Who else is it made up of?
Well,
so you've shown us you've just discussed the prophet, the leaders, the ETs, the evil ETs. Just picture evil ET.
The first ones were cicadas.
No, not quite.
No, the first ones were the worms.
No.
No.
The first ones were the best ones.
The first ones were these ones.
Yeah.
This is Keith. I don't remember what they're called.
The humans call them elites.
Oh, yeah.
Their species is Senkili.
Sangili. I made the Scungili joke last time. That's what I remember.
Right. They're like lizard people, essentially, is the best way to describe them.
And then?
No.
And then?
Yeah.
And then were the worms, also known as the kitty cats.
Yes, the Letgolo.
Yes.
Or the hunters.
Honestly, could you blame me for remembering any of these?
No, that's why this is hilarious.
And also, you just gotta, just look at that.
You have to describe it for the people.
It's a cat. It's a kitty cat. And it dance,
You're
dance,
doing
dance,
them
and it dance,
such
dance,
a disservice.
dance. Well, here's the thing. How do you describe this?
I mean, it's like a walking tank. Like, imagine if all the worms in the world gathered into a suit of armor.
It's made of noodles.
And had a gun for an arm. That's what a Letgolo is.
That's pretty metal.
Right.
Let's Attack of the Killer Tomatoes Part 2.
There you go.
Night of the Maranatha. Right. And then?
I believe so.
And then was the cicadas.
Yes.
That I call them the cicadas because that's exactly what they are. They look exactly like cicadas.
Yeah, they're basically anthropomorphic bugs.
And if you live in anywhere except for the southern United States,
right.
Cicadas
we ride those in Texas.
Are incredibly loud.
Yeah.
We're not in Texas.
I know, but I've been to Texas enough that that's...
Yeah.
I feel like I can reference that.
We pick these off trees in Georgia.
Right. Yeah. The bugs in Texas are no joke.
Yeah. Bugs in Florida, also. Have you ever been bitten by a mosquito in Florida?
Yes.
They take you to Disneyland.
Oh, man. That'd be nice.
That's a long trip. Disneyland instead of Disney World. And then you've got Zathura here.
I think the grunts come first, but either way.
Well, the nipple lords, the grunts.
Yes, they're just wee little lads that are just obsessed with nipples and do whatever you're told.
They are tiny rancors.
But again, not actual nipples, like bottle nipples.
Here, let me do the influencer thing here.
Yeah, there's no real good way to describe them other than just very angry, demonic short people.
They have pyramids on their backs.
Well, so the interesting thing is, that's a gas tank. They breathe methane. So that's why they wear the mask and have the backpacks, is because they carry tanks of methane with them everywhere. That's why if you hit them right in the games, they explode. It's amazing.
Dope as heck.
That's also why they're used as suicide bombers, because they basically run in with grenades and then that ignites the methane and that makes a bigger explosion. Yeah, it's crazy. So there you go.
I think there's a reason I haven't played any of these games.
It's intense.
And then?
And then the Velociraptors.
And then the Velociraptor Zathura monsters.
Yep.
Do you remember that movie?
So the jackals. Mm-hmm.
That was awesome.
It's a good movie.
It's a jackal.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And then...
Yeah, the final recruits just before the war began.
It's a rhinoceros.
That's a helmet.
It's a rhinoceros.
It's a gorilla with a rhinoceros helmet.
Yeah.
The brutes, they're like the second biggest, hardest bad guy of the game. They replaced the Sangili in Halo 3.
They replaced the Scungili.
So, yeah, so the Covenant is basically just this collective of aliens who all believe in seeking Forerunner stuff and technology and understanding, because they believe that the Forerunners transcended, and if they follow the path of the Forerunners, they will transcend as well. And so, in the last episode, we discussed how war began, essentially. And so, war with humanity and aliens began, and it starts to feel a little bit more Halo. And I can promise that today will feel even more Halo. We start to get closer and closer to what would be familiar to people when they think of Halo and the Halo games and everything.
Also, don't go off of my recap. Please watch the previous episodes, because I am stupid.
No, it's a lot of crazy new lore and everything. You've got so much packed in there, it's hard to insert anything new. So, but yeah, so now, if you remember last week we talked about, one of the significant things we talked about was the Spartan program.
Oh, yes, child murder.
Yeah. Well, not murder.
Not murder. Kidnapping.
Just a bunch of immoral things.
Kidnapping, cloning, and then probably death that could have been prevented.
I mean, essentially by not doing it, because, they take these kids and turn them into super soldiers because they need the war to end quickly. And the idea is, if you have soldiers that can do 10 times what a normal person could do, that should clean things up pretty quickly. Turns out it was a smart thing to do, because while fighting other humans was not the hugest priority, or I mean it was, but turns out the bigger priority was going to be the aliens that were now invading humanity.
Because First Contact did not go well.
No, it never does. So the Spartan 2 program, for reminder's sake, began in 2511. By the year 2525, they were augmented into super soldiers in the same year that the war with the Covenant began, so 2525. Now fast forward to 2531, and there are plans for new Spartans. In the first program, if you remember, there were only 31 who survived and reportedly cost around the price of 3 battleships. And I'm not talking about battleships of the sea. I'm talking about battleships that fly in space and can rip through dimensions to travel faster. Future space battleships.
Big boys.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like think Star Wars ships, like not quite Star Destroyers, but maybe, like Carillion corvettes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Which is what I was pointing at for those who are watching.
So 3 of those, just for the sake of 30 soldiers. Now, this was including the training and the surgery and the power armor. I didn't spend too much time, but the iconic look of the Spartans is accomplished by the Mjolnir armor. It's named Mjolnir. There's a lot of Greek and Norse mythology mixed in. I'm not going to get into it, but when we get to the planet Reach, much of the planet is named after things. You have Isengard, you have a couple of other names of like Norse gods and everything. Like, it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, Reach is where the Spartans were taken to train. So Mjolnir probably just fits in with the lore of the planet. But the original iteration was not powered armor. It was just super armor. It was super thick, super powerful. It did enhance them a little bit more, but it wasn't exactly what Chief is using in the games. But even still expensive. It's more than a helmet, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the UNSC needed better troops, more troops, and cheaper troops. So the Spartan 3 program was launched. But this time, no stealing children. Instead, they would use orphans.
You've been waiting to use that.
I do have to mention, so Spartan 2 is the name of this program, and although it's going to kind of be referred to as the first Spartans, which they are, technically they follow a project called Project Orion, which are retroactively considered to be the first Spartans.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, basically, you augmented humans, not like Captain America style, but more so in terms of survivability and stamina, because you would slap them into a power exosuit that, if went wrong, could rip them apart. So, like, they had to be super performance in order to survive in the exosuit. The exosuit eventually became the Mjolnir armor, and the Orion soldiers became were followed by Spartans.
Huh.
So if the numbering system seems off, that's why.
It does seem off. But also, geez, don't put the baby in the tin can.
So the idea was to use orphans that were created through the Covenant War. So basically, they lost parents to the Covenant War, and UNSC was basically like, "Hey, kid, you want to get back? You want to stick it to the alien man?"
That sounds like Attack on
Titan. They get a lot of willing participants, and also because apparently trauma makes you stronger.
Apparently,
but nonetheless, the program promised better results than Dr. Halsey's Spartans, who, if that doesn't imply, she oversaw the creation. She came up with the idea. She's the reason we have to thank for the Spartan program, or condemn for the Spartan program. Depends on how you feel.
I'd say condemn. That's a solid condemn for me, Doc.
So mostly the reason they promised to do so much better than the previous program was because it was led by James Ackerson, who was just a sort of political science rival of Dr. Halsey. And so his priority was to benefit himself first and his career, and benefit humanity second.
That's fair.
As any good scientist. They did have greater results, though, in the Spartan 3 program. By 2536, 300 candidates were trained and augmented. Again, at most, there were 75 in the original batch, and only half survived. Here we have 300 candidates, all of which survived the augmentation. This is also because the augmentation was a little less invasive. It did still, again, make them more powerful, but if anything, was more like permanent steroids. One benefit is it did not castrate them. Most Spartan 2s were rendered inert by the programming. Not sure how down there connects to everywhere else, but just another reason why that's not a great program.
Well,
so there's not going to be any John Juniors running around in the Halo universe.
Darn. I guess it's kind of like the Witcher program, the path.
Yeah, you mentioned that last time.
Because they were children who were either abandoned or children of surprise in one or two cases. That's why there's not very many Witchers left. Because they either got killed off, but also because they can't make more Witchers. Right.
Well, if anything, I see that between the chemicals and the surgeries that they do, basically their body stops supporting that equipment, and so therefore it's not there. Like, their brain has been rewired to put every effort into everything else to make them super strong and powerful, that, like, literally their body cannot sustain sex life, which, I mean, again, it's just one of those things where it's like not even simple satisfaction of a relationship is doable. Like, I have to say, one really good book that explores this is in the Kilo 5 trilogy, which takes place after Halo 3. So it's really cool, interesting lore. If you've never gone beyond Halo 3 in terms of story, highly recommend it. Maybe we'll talk about it eventually, but one of the leaders of a big mission in that is a former Spartan 2, and stuff like that comes up, and it's just really interesting because I love exploring. It's one thing to know what happened to them, but it's even more interesting to step in their shoes and just kind of feel it even more, because like it just really reinforces the trauma that they endured.
There is no opportunity for a normal life.
No, ever, never. Like you either are a soldier forever, or I don't know, you're just nothing.
What is this, a Gundam series?
Yeah, it's a struggle, bro. I mean, same thing happens to the super soldiers in Gundam, though. I'm not sorry.
They either get like
spoilers,
dead. They either get like multiple personality disorders.
Yeah, actually.
Or just naked on a spaceship for some reason.
Yeah.
But hey, giant robot.
Giant robot. So they were slightly smaller, but still, like, imagine just your average tall person. So whereas Spartan 2s were like unnaturally tall afterwards, these were like passably tall people.
So like going from Red Link to, like, I don't know, PewDiePie.
I guess so.
I don't know how tall PewDiePie is. They might be the same height.
Well, I mean, like, it's not a huge difference in some cases, but they're noticeably different, and it's just all down to the procedures that they endure. But clearly it was better because all 300 survived, which is pretty cool.
There you go. If you're short, you'll live longer.
There you go.
There you go. I'm gonna live forever.
And so the same year, 2536, all 300 Spartans of Alpha Company were deployed and killed.
Of course.
Immediately on their first mission. So essentially what they did, now to be fair, they did not give them power armor. They just basically made them super strong and powerful, but then gave them regular armor and threw all of them at one very important mission, because if you send Spartans, surely it'll get done.
Here's the thing. Did they aim for the bushes?
I don't know what they did, but yeah, not a lot of good happened. But it's okay, because Beta Company was begun in 2537 and deployed in 2545.
And
were
then
killed.
died immediately.
Killed on their first mission. All but 2 were killed. 2 survived, and the 2 survivors, Tom and Lucy, assisted the Spartan 3 trainer, who turns out was a Spartan 2, who was kidnapped by the UNSC on a mission in order to train Spartan 3s. So when they came up with this program, they were like, who should train them? And so they basically thought, who better than a Spartan? And just nabbed this dude on the road, worse than that, like on a mission, and made him train all these kids. And to his credit, he was training them well. It was how they were being used and deployed. You know, like Kurt Ambrose, who is the Spartan 2 that trains them, is one of the coolest characters. We get a lot of development from him, and he's very interesting. Also, Tom and Lucy, super interesting characters. I don't want it to seem like they're not doing a good job. Like,
it's just incredibly sad.
When you're looking at the Halo universe with as much loss and death as there is, you can almost want to say that somebody's messing up, but no, it's just sometimes it's really that bad and that hard to fight the Covenant. You got to think these are guys going with assault rifles after people with plasma weapons. Like, you've got the Covenant who have personal shielding. They like they have a lot of technological advances.
These boys, they have the shields.
Yes, the Sangili, the elites.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reason why humanity sucks at this war. We were just not ready for it.
Exactly. We weren't aliens.
So Tom and Lucy helped Kurt train the next batch, Gamma Company, who were, again, more successful. So all batches contained 300 troops. So every batch created, so we're up to 900 Spartans now. But they were largely successful. But they were also deployed in more support positions than previously, mostly because of the Battle of Reach. It jump-started with something that, rather than needing all Spartans on one mission, they needed the Spartans spread out because the Covenant War was spreading. And so by the time of around 2550, you have quite a few Spartan 3s out there in the general military population. So many of them are on bases or are squad leaders or something like that. Mm-hmm. Again, not with Mjolnir armor. The significant thing of the Spartan 3s is most of them don't get armor. They're just super enhanced. Arguably goes to show that a big part of the original Spartan 2 success is also that not only were they enhanced, but they were given very technologically advanced armor. Mm-hmm. It means certain things, like you can just jump out of a ship without a parachute and land okay. Like, you, even with enhancements, a Spartan 3 could not do that. They're still human and would die. But you put on the armor, all of a sudden, I mean, it makes you Iron Man. Iron Man is a man, but because of the armor, can do unmanly things.
Yeah. Underneath the armor, he's a billionaire playboy philanthropist.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so that goes to show how the world outside of the main battle is expanding. There's more Spartans. They're clearly recognizing that the Spartans are doing something and we need more of them. Maybe not going about the best way of it, but they are trying to essentially create an army of super soldiers to be able to fight the Covenant, because they're getting desperate. I mean, if you can deploy 300 men on a mission, men and women on a mission, and none of them survive, it's kind of bleak. It's kind of bad. Mm-hmm. But again, I don't necessarily think they were set up for success.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
So now we get to 2552, July. 27 years after the war began. So all of that recap can make it seem like things are just kind of happening and it's all cool and wonderful, but it's been a long time, essentially since the events of the last episode where we discussed the beginning of war. 27 years later.
How long do Spartans live?
Don't know.
No one's died yet?
Well, I mean, naturally, no. I mean, John, Fred, Linda, and Kelly are the oldest surviving Spartans.
The names, sometimes, they're just so, like... It's like when you give a cat the name, like, oh yeah, that's Kyle. I love stuff like that. Because they don't, like, lean heavily into the sci-fi of it.
Well, I mean, that's their names.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing they have is their names. So, John is John. I mean, that's the only thing of his past that he has. All they have of themselves is their names.
I was trying to make a funny goof, and then you made it sad.
So it seems generic because it just kind of is. But no, they're still alive around 2558 is one of the last time points I think we have in the Halo lore. So they're still alive there, but they're also still active duty. Which, to be fair, so now this is 27 years after. Mm-hmm. Now, they were augmented in 2525 when war began at the age of 14. So that means that John and all the other Spartans would be 41 years old now. So,
happy birthday.
Yeah, so by the events of the first game, they are 41 years old, all Spartan 2s. By the time we're going into like Halo 5, Halo Infinite timeline, yeah, he's pushing 50, dog. And still active duty, like heavy active duty. It's insane. But that's the benefits of the augmentation. We haven't seen yet long-term ailments caused by it, but who knows? Who knows where we're going?
I mean, he might have kidney stones. We don't know.
So, 27 years later, after war began, one of the greatest battles took place that nearly turned the point of the war. The battle and fall of Reach. Spoiler alert. So, that's how it ends.
It didn't go well?
It did not go well. Oh. So, I know what you're thinking. There's a game about that one. And there is. But the battle that took place at Reach is far beyond what we see in arguably the best game. And because of that, I wanted to run down the major events of both the game and arguably the best novel, and kind of reconcile them together for the full battle of Reach. I recommend both. Now, I'm going to go ahead and spoil you and let you know that this is the only video game we're going to talk about right now.
Right now?
Yeah. So after this episode, we're breaking from Halo. So by the end of this, I'll have brought you into the opening scene of the first game.
What could we talk about next?
If you so choose, you can go from listening to these episodes into playing the first game and have all of the lore you never knew before and play a completely different game. Eventually do want to talk about the video game lore themselves, and also I want to talk about what happens after Halo 3 because it's some of my favorite freaking Halo lore. Mm-hmm. And everybody craps on it and didn't acknowledge it, and that's why, oh, Halo 5, where'd all this plot come from? Out of nowhere because y'all hated the fourth one. Wait, Halo Infinite, where'd all this lore come from? Out of nowhere because y'all hated the fifth one. Because people keep hating on the games, they keep changing, and they won't stick to any good concepts. And so my favorite character is unceremoniously dead, and I am not okay with it.
How's that feel?
Right? It sucks. So anyway, my feelings aside, we will eventually talk about more Halo lore, especially if people like this. There's been a few people that have reached out and said some things, and I really appreciate it because we never know how it's going to go when we put this stuff out. So hearing that it's actually well received by even a few people is really awesome and inspiring and encouraging and everything. So we're not stopping because people hate it, although nobody said they hate it, but I could take over for Halo for a very long time, and we have plenty more we want to talk about. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, so next up after this will be you having fun with something, your favorite video game franchise, actually. So,
my absolute favorite video game franchise.
Yeah. So again, 2552, July, a small fleet appears in the system around Reach from the Covenant, which is the second most important planet in Halo universe. Think of it like Earth 2. So, much like the discovery of Harvest all those years ago, it was after a luminary or forerunner ding-ding thing told the Covenant where some interesting stuff was. That small fleet would very covertly begin exploring the system with small teams in an attempt to test the waters. Once they realized there were several humans on the planet Reach, the center of the system, they silently focused their attention on the planet. When a large area lost communication and surveillance, several Marines were sent to investigate. When the Marines went missing, it was then time to call Spartans. And so enter Spartan Noble Team. So they were led by Spartan 3 Carter. They were consisted of Spartan 3 Cat.
This is the Kitty Cat. Well, oh wait, this is the one with the metal arm.
Yes, it is.
It is the one.
Yeah, that's the first time we really get to see a cool prosthetic in use. We have Spartan 3 Jun.
Big boy with big gun. He's a thick one.
Oh, just wait. We have Spartan 3 Emil.
Oh my goodness.
Edgelord.
Thick boy.
You gotta have the cool guy.
Yeah.
And Spartan 2 George. So there was actually a Spartan 2 on this team, primarily made up of Spartan 3s, which was very interesting.
Which one is Nathan Fillion?
Not in this one.
Oh.
Yeah, no, not yet.
Now, that's ODST, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Good job.
Aha.
So now there is another one, and that's the character you play in the video game, which is Spartan Noble 6. He doesn't have a name because he's ambiguous. You're meant to be able to create your own character for the first time in Halo, and so your character is you. That's a really cool feature that they added in and everything. So Noble Team. Now you might be asking, wait, I thought you said that all the Spartan 3s were killed on their first missions. Yes, all that deployed. So covertly, there were some who were held back, and namely those. So,
and some that were sent to Blood Gulch.
Essentially. So Carter, Jun, Camille were all Alpha Company. So they were from the first batch of Spartan 3s. Cat was from the second company of Spartan 3s. Essentially, they outperformed their counterparts, and they were like, hey, these guys are too good to waste. Let's pull them out and use them for secret missions.
Mm-hmm.
So Noble Team is like this A-list team of Spartans that are used when other teams fail. And clearly, they're Spartan 3s that have been given Mjolnir armor to be able to be more effective. So basically, they were like, hey, we can't give everybody armor, but we can give the best of the best armor.
Yeah.
And that's where these folks come from. George, though, was just a Spartan 2 who was put into the team, I assume, to balance it out in terms of having more combat experience than any of the others. But anyway, so that's your team for the Halo Reach game. And again, we're going to kind of cut between game lore and book lore, but it's all from the Fall of Reach. So obviously, upon investigation, the UNSC's initial assumption that insurrectionists, or humans, were the cause of the trouble, which is why Noble Team was on Reach in the first place, was to battle against insurrectionists. It proved to be wrong because they found out, nope, it's the Covenant. In the game, it doesn't do a great job of this, but this is a big deal because this is, again, like Earth 2. This is homeworld.
Mm-hmm.
This would be the equivalent of, say we're at war with a country, and all of a sudden you find insurrectionists from that country in your city. Like, how did they get here? Like, how did they get through the security measures? How did this happen? Like, this is red alert levels of stuff. They don't really linger on it much, but it's a huge deal. And so Noble Team assisted the initial resistance to the small fleet, and with the sacrifice of George, the good boy, they even took down one of the fleet's primary ships. It was a small victory, but it was short-lived as a new fleet appeared quickly behind them. It turns out that while the fleet that was being fought against currently did not report their findings, they didn't have to, because another fleet that appeared randomly, seemingly, got there because they had data on the planet from a previous fleet battle. This is what instituted the thing called Cole Protocol. It's named after Preston J. Cole, one of the arguably most deified characters of the Halo lore, if you get into the books. He's basically the only human that's ever, like, just really stuck it to the Covenant. He came up with battle plans and managed to take down fleets of ships and all. Like, he was amazing. Well, essentially, he proposed coming up with the idea of, hey, if they capture us and they take our intelligence, they could lead them back to Earth or any other planet we have. So, I say, when you see Covenant, you burn your files instantly. Like, don't even risk it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically destroy everything and fight. Now, if you win, you win. But if you lose, they don't get anything. And this is why that exists, is because now, here they are at Reach's doorstep because they found somebody's USB drive with coordinates. And so, this new fleet shows up, and now the war really starts to get bigger. And so the Cole Protocol is a huge deal in Halo book lore and everything like that, for this very reason. You don't wipe your files, you're going to have a bad time.
Gonna have a bad time.
So now with John and the Spartan 2s, so if you remember, there were 31 Spartans left alive after the initial augmentation, and they'd been doing their part in small battles with insurrectionists and eventually the Covenant. And in fact, it was because the Spartan 2s, including John, Kelly, and Sam, fought against the Covenant that they actually captured some technology that allowed them to update the Mjolnir armor with energy shields. Basically, they captured a shield from the Jackals on a mission. We're like, hey, this makes a shield. How does that work? Let's figure it out and then use it. So the whole reason that Spartans get even more effective later on is because of Master Chief and his team. But anyway, so now was the time for the Spartans to take their biggest task yet. While Reach was under attack, the Office of Naval Intelligence, or ONI, saw an opportunity. ONI's like the CIA or the FBI or the Men in Black. They're that branch of government that is always and every time up to no good. Like, they're the ones that come up with the just bad, like, they're the ones that come up with the child stealing schemes and all this other stuff. So, while people are dying, they're basically like, you know what this is? This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to rub our grubby little hands together and make some evil plans. Essentially. So, Operation Red Flag.
That's a red flag.
This is, the operation is to capture a Covenant ship and return to Covenant home base with it, and then set a nuke and destroy home base. So, essentially, Independence Day.
Okay. I get it.
I mean, kind of effective.
That is effective, but like, which ship?
Well, that's the thing. So, this is the secret Men in Black bad stuff of the plan. The only way for it to work is you can't capture a Covenant ship, so you just have to wait for one to show up. So basically, they were wanting Reach to get attacked so that they could hijack a ship mid-battle, because it wouldn't be able to get assisted because the battle's too chaotic. Like, the whole scheme was to basically wait for an opportunity to then hijack them.
That is stinky.
Yeah.
How dare you, FBI?
So this was meant to be a Spartan-only task, and could have ended the war more quickly. Could have. The battle around Reach had gotten so bad, actually, that the Spartans were needed elsewhere. Most of the Spartans, led by John's best friend, Fred, went to the surface to defend the power stations of the orbital defense guns that were one of the only things protecting the planet so far. Mm-hmm. So basically, like we have the International Space Station, they have space stations that are just literally guns.
We do too. His name is Captain Hatfield.
There you go. So the idea is, like, these are remote controlled guns, essentially, that help defend. I mean, it's like the Ultron thing, where, like, you have all these suits of armor around the world just ready to protect. Yeah. Except, just imagine they're like semi-truck sized guns.
Imagine it didn't go badly.
Right. So when the Covenant realized, hey, we can't invade fully as long as those guns are there, that's when they were like, okay, well, go to the planet, find the power source, and then just destroy it. So the Spartans were sent to protect that. Meanwhile, John, Linda, and James were sent to enact Cole Protocol on a small craft that had fallen under Covenant attack, because, again, they don't want clearly we're in the circumstance of worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, they won't know what to do with it. They won't be able to. I mean, now millions are dead because that happened. So they're sent on a small mission to go fix that. Now, based on the fact that we don't really see any other Spartans around for many of the other games, you can guess how that goes. So the 28 other Spartans sent to Reach have quite the battle, and even on the way down, several die before even reaching the objective. But not all of them bite the bullet. If you've played Halo 5, then you know that Fred and Kelly make it out, which is nice. But so do a few more, but that is a very different story that I won't get into here. So for now, you're just going to have to know some of them are running around out there, but how? I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about it later. So back with Chief, they managed to destroy the data, but James is lost in space, and Linda is injured but alive. With no time to get back and regroup with the other Spartans, John is sent to carry out Operation Red Flag on the flagship Pillar of Autumn.
So that's a dope name.
Oh yeah, all the ship names are amazing in this.
I prefer to call myself the Pillar of Autumn because, like, that's when Halloween happens.
Right. So there, Linda was placed in stasis for the time being to sustain her wounds, and meanwhile, John and the others are left to wonder if anyone else survived the Battle of Reach. The day is now August 30th, and it's the final day of Reach.
That's ominous.
Yeah. So back with Noble Team, remember them. So they're, while all this other stuff's happening, Noble Team's kind of just helping out and doing their part on the ground and whatnot. But now they're given an even more important task. To get Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn.
Oh no.
Yeah. So Cortana, which, I mean...
The babe of Halo.
Oh yeah, I forgot I have visual. Very iconic, obviously. If you know Halo, you know Cortana, but...
this does not do her any favors.
There you go. For the sake of understanding, Cortana was fully debuted specifically for Operation Red Flag. See, she was an incredibly intelligent AI that had been studying everything they knew about the Covenant till now in order to be able to operate the ship that they'd hijacked, as well as speak the language of the Covenant in order to get landing clearance. So essentially, she was the key to getting this mission done.
Mm-hmm.
And before you think, well, if she's so smart, well, why didn't they just use AI like her to win the war? It's because she's unique. She's not like any other AI. See, AI are digitally constructed. I mean, most people now, 2020, you understand what an AI is. Think of Alexa and Siri. But your average Halo AI is hyper intelligent, because I'm going to go ahead and tell you, the government has AI.
Yeah, I mean,
currently.
I have a Windows HP computer and it has Cortana on it.
Yeah. So that's how far we've come now. She is the AI
she lives in my computer.
Microsoft. So AI is essentially hyper intelligent computer brain. In the Halo lore, they're visualized by a hologram of a person and everything. But all AI is made. All AI is built, but not Cortana.
No.
Cortana is unique because she is created off of not a built brain, but a copy of a living brain, the brain of Catherine Halsey. She's not dead. Don't worry. Don't
hold on a minute.
So you want to know everybody that has ever said that Catherine Halsey that Cortana's hot? Guess what? That's just a young Catherine Halsey.
She is hot.
It's played by the same actress and everything in the games. It's the same voice actress for everything.
I feel like this is a GLaDOS Carolyn type reveal, which you've never played Portal, so you don't get it.
Well, again, it's something you only get in the games, though. In the book, or in the books. I'm sorry.
Oh.
In the book Fall of Reach is where it's explained how Cortana came to be, and it's also why Halsey is so protective of Cortana.
That's
it's
fair.
Also why Cortana is latched on to John, because Halsey comes at it from a very maternal point, but Cortana comes at it from a much more, peer point.
Yeah.
And so there's all of this built-in stuff, and that's the added benefit is Cortana comes with emotion and very human characteristics and everything. She cracks jokes. She's witty. She's not just smart, and she doesn't just think fast, but she's kind of human.
Yeah.
It's weird. In fact, I'd go so far as to say this is the closest that's ever come to composing. So if you remember, the Didact took living creations, scanned them, and turned them into AIs. That's essentially what Halsey's done with her own brain. She cloned her brain, scanned it, and turned it into Cortana.
Which, that begs the question, where did she get that technology?
Well, she's just freaking smart. But this is why humans are the actual rightful heir. Like, you see us, like, mimicking our creators throughout the lore of Halo. This is the evidence for why we are who we are. We are the rightful heirs to the mantle of responsibility. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, anyway. So, now that's answered. Now that you know a little bit more about Cortana. Well, why wasn't she just with Chief? Why is she just hanging out on Reach? In fact, if you've read the books and played the games, you'd have an even more interesting conundrum, because you'd be asking, how is she in two places at once?
Ooh.
That's ominous, but that's basically what happens, because the book came first. The book came not long after the first game. These books have been around for a very long time. Halo Reach came out, I want to say, in 2010. It just recently celebrated, I believe, its 10-year anniversary. I could be wrong exactly on the year. I'm not that up and up on actual dates. Clearly, I'm too busy thinking of fictional dates. But, the game came out after the fact. there's not a lot that disagrees with each other, but one of the things that kind of seemed as a hang-up is that, wait, Cortana's on the Pillar of Autumn, but here is Noble Team escorting her to the Pillar of Autumn.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen? It's actually explained if you kind of pay attention, and that's not a jab, it's not entirely up front in your face with it, but they specifically mentioned in Halo Reach that it is a fragment of the AI Cortana.
Okay.
So what happened? So again, Cortana's been studying the Covenant. The reason she's so important to this mission is because she has been studying the Covenant. She understands them more than anything. She's been digesting all of this information, and one bit of information that she's been really like obsessed with is this like code that came through in some other, like basically she's being fed mission intel. That's where all the information's coming from. And she's just obsessed with cracking this code. What does this mean? What is this? And so they have to get ready for Operation Red Flag, but Halsey's like, no, I need Cortana to study more, basically, like cram for the exam.
She has a geometry test. She needs to study.
Right. So if you remember, mendicant bias could fracture as well. Basically, he imparts a part of his consciousness. Mm-hmm. Now that part can recombine with the whole. I mean, it's just what it is. It's like dreaming. It sets you off on another level, but then eventually it kind of becomes one again. So in order to both study and get the team ready, she sends the AI Cortana with Chief onto the Pillar of Autumn, but keeps the fragment to continue studying. In her studying, she finally does crack the code and finds that it's actually coordinates, and it's something that's very important. It's very highly talked about amongst the Covenants, which is why she was so obsessed. She's like, this has to be something big. If they are so obsessed with it, I have to figure it out. She figures it out. It's coordinates. I'll come back to that. So now Noble Team's been tasked with getting that fragment back to the whole so that she can be whole and have all the information. Because basically the AI Cortana on the ship is disconnected from the fragment. Yes. So just because the fragment knows it doesn't mean the whole knows it. So they have to be reunited for her to have her whole information.
Okay.
So that is why she's in two places at once. That's why they have to get her back to the ship and all of that stuff. And that also means that Dr. Halsey is still on Reach. She's escorted to some safety by Spartan 3 Jun, but eventually she's still on Reach by the time Pillar of Autumn leaves. Much like the other Spartans do they survive? How do they survive if they do? That's another story. So, but Noble, yeah, we'll get there eventually, maybe. Who knows?
Maybe.
It's another one of my favorite stories. So, but no, turns out getting Cortana to the ship was not only the most difficult, but also the final mission of Noble Team. As one by one, the team members fall until only Noble 6 remains. Although, again, Spartan Jun from Noble Team helped Halsey get away. So technically, he's still alive and out there, but nobody liked him. That's why he was gone.
The yellow guy wins.
So, Noble 6 manages to get Cortana to the ship, Captain Jacob Keyes. He then stayed behind to fend off the Covenant while the Pillar of Autumn escaped and to commence its mission. Noble 6 fought well, but eventually was overtaken and killed. While the Pillar of Autumn escaped, Reach was glassed and destroyed as the Covenant took control of the battle. It was assumed that everyone left on the planet was gone. But, again, some Spartans, and maybe Dr. Halsey, do survive. If you've played some of the games, you know that is true, but you might not know how. It's all in the books.
Read the books.
Or just wait until we talk about it. But read the books, it's better.
Read the books.
And outright, I'm just going to say the only member of Noble Team to survive is Jun. I mean, that's just, we see that happen in the game. It definitely happens. You know, I'm not going to leave that open-ended. Why? Because there's nothing interesting that comes from that except one lore point, and I'm not going to talk about it right now.
You know, we really forgot to give a spoiler warning at the top of this episode.
I assume people know by now that anything you listen to us talk about is spoiled.
Yeah, it's all spoiled. It's free game. I mean, we could put like a blaring alarm at the beginning, but that's too much editing.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
Get spoiled, son.
If you've gotten this far in... Well, technically, none of the games have been spoiled if you haven't played the games. Only thing... And again, I'm covering it very generalized. So you can still read the books and get so much more. There's so much I can't get into without, again, making this a Halo podcast. So now, finally, with everything in check and Cortana returned, the Pillar of Autumn launches to fulfill the war-changing mission, Operation Red Flag. Except not. Turns out, Cortana hijacked the slip space, which is the hyperspace of Halo universe, and changed their trajectory.
To the coordinates.
To the coordinates that she deciphered.
And guess what? It's a McDonald's.
Yeah, what is it?
She just really wanted some chicken nuggets. What?
Do you know what it is?
It's the Ark.
No. It is a Halo, though.
It's the Didact planet. I don't know.
No, it's a Halo.
It's a Halo.
Like the actual.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Halo. It's just a straight up Halo.
Yeah. So now is the opening scene of the first game. So
it's a prequel. Okay.
Yeah. So if you play the first game, the game opens with you coming out of space and Jacob Keyes asking, "Did we lose them? Where are we?" Like, they literally just jumped from the Battle of Reach. But you don't know that by playing the first game.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what I'm talking about. Literally, the first game starts with a whole bit of information and history that's missing. And that's what the books gives you. That's why I advocate for them so heavily. And yes, you can play the Fall of Reach game, but you do not, like, you play that game, but it's really the story of Noble Team. It's not the story of Master Chief. You have to read the book to not only learn about his history and where he comes from, where all the Spartans come from. Like, if it were not for the books, you wouldn't even know that while you open in that game, you know how you go in there and like the one of the opening parts is your Master Chief. You wake up from the cryo tube and everything like that. There's a point where you can go around and see another Spartan in a tube. You know who that is? That's Linda from the Battle of Reach, who was put in stasis. Like, most people just play that game and think Master Chief's the only one. But literally, in the lore, on that ship is another Spartan.
Okay.
What happens to her in the first game? You don't know, because that ship gets blown up, by the way.
Well, I'd assume that she gets blown up on the ship.
Nope.
Okay.
How? Again, that's more story. Yeah, like, there's so much. And this is why I love Halos, because there is so much. It's so big, it's so interesting, it's so cool. And much like Star Wars, where it's a universe and lore built on everything having an explanation, everything having a story, everything having an origin. I love that stuff because, like, the fact that the grunts breathe methane, like, that's unique to their species. The fact that the jackals are snipers because they're frail and they don't trust themselves in physical battle, so they'd rather snipe people instead of fighting.
That's fair. I mean,
like, all of that. For instance, did you know the Arbiter is in the first game?
Arbiter?
Yeah. Before he's the Arbiter, he's Fleet Master Thel Vadami, and he's in the game. In fact, you see him in the game. Like, stuff like that, where it's like all of these things and information that you don't get, and guess what? You can still have a good time with the game.
Yeah.
But there's so much more you can dig into with Halo, and that's the beauty of it. Even with 3 episodes full of hour-long podcasts full of Halo lore, and there's still so much more, even just in these stories.
Mm-hmm.
So much here I have not gotten into, dude. Never mind the plethora of other books. There's actually about 6 books that all take place before the first game.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And yet, you can play the game and never need any of it. But you'll never play the game the same once you have the lore. Once you know more to the story, once you have more context, once you have some gaps filled in, you'll never watch Halo or play it the same way ever again. It's super awesome.
You know what else makes you never play Halo the same way again?
What's that?
Skulls.
That is true. I do. Being a Halo fan, I hate Halo multiplayer. It's the reason I stayed away from multiplayer for so long. I only play multiplayer when it comes to Battlefront now. I just never was a big fan of Halo multiplayer. And it's arguably the reason why multiplayer is so elitist nowadays, why we have esports. Like, Halo as games were revolutionary. and that's the crazy thing, is it's successful in two major ways. It's successful as a major sci-fi brand, and it's successful as a major retail blockbusting game. Like, it's a twofer, and it's amazing that it accomplishes both so well.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to think that Halo did not invent the multiplayer genre, but it perfected it. Halo 3.
We would not have what we have without it.
We wouldn't have an entire company called Rooster Teeth.
True, exactly.
If it were not for Halo 3.
Yep, and so, yeah, like, that was the whole point going into this, was we could just talk about Halo, and we could just discuss, oh, I like this, I like that, like, but I really wanted to dive the story, because I feel like so many people would not know it, and don't know it, and, I mean, if you don't read the books, at least you have me talking ridiculously about it. But I would hope people read the books. I definitely recommend, and somebody asked me this on Twitter, what I recommend. I recommend The Fall of Reach because it's the best Halo book.
Yeah.
It's the first Halo book, and it's very well written, and everything that connects to the games is there. If you love Halo as games and you want to read, probably good to start with Fall of Reach because it directly impacts the games. If you just want to read because you like reading, Contact Harvest is my favorite, or not my favorite, the best book. So, like, I want to be clear on, like, in terms of the most well written and the most interesting and the most almost unique, Contact Harvest. It, like, I can look at that and say that is a masterpiece of a book. In terms of favorites, though, Fall of Reach, it's not the best book, but I just really, really love it. I have my original copy even, and it's like falling apart and trashy and everything because it came out in like 2002, but
that's the best kind of paperback, honestly.
It's been with me overseas. You know, it's traveled very well with me over many, many years, and I've read it about 6 times.
It's like my copy of The Outsiders.
Yeah,
being held together with Scotch tape.
And you know, most of the Halo novels aren't hard reads. Again, the Forerunner saga, hard read. Like,
that is deep sci-fi.
I would look into it before committing to it because it's a lot. Or maybe check out even the audiobooks because sometimes listening to process it is even better.
Yeah.
Because having to reread sometimes, like, it's a hard one. I've told myself I will never reread them. Not that they're not great stories. It's just
so much.
It's brutal. But otherwise, a lot of the books are really easy, flat reads. There's several that are even just crime dramas. There's stuff where it's specifically focused on Oni and, you know, CIA stuff and, you know, all kinds of dark, dirty military secrets and all that. There's some that are just straight, no, we're fighting, we're shooting a bunch of people, we're killing people. There's some that are seemingly sci-fi heavy as well, but not necessarily brutally sci-fi heavy. Like, it's such a mixed bag that there's something for everybody in every version of Halo, whether it's just games or whether it's the story. So, yeah, highly recommend it. And there's also a novelization of the first game. Unfortunately, 2 and 3 never got novelized. Well, none of the other games got novelized, actually.
Yeah.
But Halo the Flood is the novelization of the first game. So if anybody's wanting to just read and, like, oh, I don't game, but this is kind of interesting, I would check that out, maybe.
Yeah. Also, the Master Chief Collection is available on Steam.
Yep, and they just added Halo ODST, which is the second best Halo game out there.
Nathan Fillion.
So I'm just going to go ahead and go on record. Yeah, Nathan Fillion. I can't slam the table because that would hurt everybody's ears, but Nathan freaking Fillion is the best human on Earth, and we do not deserve him.
We do not.
He is amazing. I love that man to death, and he's so happy to be in Halo.
Right.
So happy he came back.
He's so happy to be in everything he's in. He kills it every single time.
He's amazing. He like Halo, and that's what's so great about Halo ODST, and that's why he's such a perfect lead in that game. All the characters have that same chemistry of just being funny, believable, and just great.
Yeah. Even the idle dialogue.
Yeah. Well, and
fantastic.
that's why Halo 3 ODST is, to me, the second best great game, because it has nothing to do with the Spartans and the stoic, you know, brutal, you know, tank people. It's real soldiers. It's also got the cutest characters because that's where we get introduced to the Huragok. And, you know, you get the choice to either save them or kill them, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, best game Halo Reach. Halo 3 ODST and Halo 4. And there's fanboys that are going to be mad at me because the original 3 aren't on my top 3.
Oh, trust me. In the next couple of episodes, I'm imagining that there's going to be fanboys angry at me too.
Yeah,
so
no, I mean, I love the first game and the third game. The second one's all right, but I mean, overall, in terms of but that's the thing to me. Halo is more than Master Chief. Mm-hmm. Halo is more than the Master Chief trilogy. Yeah, and that's really what it is. Is the Halo 1, 2, and 3 are just Chief's story. You've got Halo Reach, has nothing to do with Chief. You've got ODST, has nothing to do with Chief. And if anything, it's cleaning up his mess. You've got Halo 4, which is the best Chief game because now he's an actual character. Like, yeah. And Halo 5's on the bottom because, sorry. Also, there's RPGs. Halo Wars 2. Halo Wars 2 is one of the best non-regular Halo games out there. Like, that's the thing is we've spent so much time talking about lore, we're just now getting into game stuff, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it.
And here's the thing is I only know so much about Halo because of you. Because I hang out with you every day, almost all the time.
Yeah, so you know what you get for that. Good for you. Good for you.
I put up with you. But, no, it's mutual putting up with.
That's love.
I've never played a Halo campaign. Mm-hmm. Like, I have started the first game, got stuck on the ramp thing, and just gave up. Yeah. Like...
Well, and that's the thing is, like, there's so many people that miss out on Halo because they see it as a game.
I have so much trouble with first person.
Much more. It's so much more. Yeah. Now, some people are like, well, it's a book. I don't read. You know, I'm like, okay, well, but you're missing out because it's really great. And I say that to Star Wars people all the time, too. And so I'm like, you're missing out. Star Wars is great in the books.
Yeah, why don't you just go look at cave etchings and feel bad about yourself?
Right. I only look at stuff with pictures.
Picture books for Star Wars.
That's true. Thank you for everyone that's put up with, and thank you to the couple of people that have joined specifically because we're talking about Halo. Again, that's just awesome and much appreciated. Hopefully you enjoyed the series. Hopefully, if anything, it was just good listening. I'm sure it was new to a lot of people, and for people that are very used to us having a very Star Wars-centric perspective, I'm sure it was different hearing us gush about other things. And I know this was a different style, very narrative rather than discussion-based, but overall, I think it was cool, and I am more than willing to do it again. But again, I don't want to take over with Halo. That's very easy to do, and so it's going to be shelved for a while. Maybe not again until next season, just because, again, so many other things we would love to talk about. And so stick with us. We have exciting things. Did you want to say what you're talking about next week for the people?
I think the people who are watching the video already know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Not only am I wearing a Legend of Zelda shirt, I also have a Triforce blanket right behind me.
There you go.
And
You're
also
dropping all the hints.
The Master Sword and Shield behind me, and also the freaking Deku mask. Mm-hmm. And I have not been subtle, but people still were wrong.
There you go.
It's very funny.
So many people thought it was going to be Mario.
Yeah.
Which you do love.
I do love. Like, I'm replaying Mario Sunshine right now. Yeah, Legend of Zelda is my favorite video game series. Mm-hmm. I have favorite games within the franchise, but overall, I so freaking love Legend of Zelda. Mm-hmm. And I'm so excited to talk about it. Yeah. Because I've been doing nothing for the last few weeks, but like just poring over Hyrule Historia and Zelda Dungeon and just being like, oh wow.
Yeah, now you see like it was really fun and cool, and I enjoyed preparing for this because it was finally something to, like, I literally got to bask in something other than Star Wars for a little while, which it's not that Star Wars is always 100% what we're watching or consuming, but when you study something, there's such another level of affection for it. Yeah. And so to be able to spend so much time re-going over all of this stuff, like it really kind of lights a fire. It's really fun. Yeah. And so, thanks to patron Jim who recommended, hey, why don't you talk about video games you like? Yeah. Because that's kind of how this came about was, randomly it was just like, okay, well, if I had to talk about certain video games, I guess I could do Halo, and obviously your easy choice was Legends of Zelda, so it was just, it came about that. So thank you, Jim, for that recommendation. We've enjoyed preparing for it.
Yeah, and also I'm going to disappoint or overjoy some people. Skyward Sword is arguably the most important game in the franchise.
Yeah. It's the first game.
It's the first game.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
It's not great.
Spoonfuls. Or what was the...
No, it's Spoonfuls.
It's Spoonfuls, yeah. So,
Spoonfuls.
Spoonfuls. Her Peter. Her Peter.
For those of you who don't know, we watched through the game Grumps.
Yeah, because we don't.
I wasn't gonna make you play. I wasn't gonna make you play it.
Well, we don't have a way to play it. We don't have a Wii. Yeah. So the way I have been introduced to Legend of Zelda games is through playthroughs of the games by the Game Grumps. And if anything, I think I enjoy the Game Grumps enjoying Legend of Zelda more than I think I would enjoy the games. Because when I played my one Zelda game, I hated it.
2.
Well, yeah.
You played 2.
I played the second one because the first one sucked. Breath of the Wild is not the best game.
We are gonna have this conversation so many times in the next episode, the next episode.
Yes,
because it's gonna go lore heavy, timeline. Try and explain the timeline.
Yeah,
I will do my best.
I get a break. You get to talk a lot. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
So you'll have to tune in again next week for more NerdyVerse. New topic, same show, same people.
Yeah. Also, Breath of the Wild is fantastic. You're just not a Zelda player.
It's a great game in concept, except they ruin it. They shoot themselves in the foot.
I disagree.
It's the worst Zelda game.
I disagree.
I will share my thoughts.
I know you will. You're currently sharing your thoughts.
Oh no, I'll break them down for why I'm right. I will tell all the ways why I am right.
Okay, and I will build a counter list for why you're wrong.
So if you love Legend of Zelda, let us know. Oops. No.
Aaron Hansen, help.
Yet again, thank you guys for putting up with the Halo dump and everything like that. Thank you to our patrons, Jug.
Thanks, Jug.
I combined 2 of our patrons. It's amazing. Doug, Jim, and Rebecca.
That is a weird combo.
Right? You guys are awesome. Thank you for your support. You can check out our Patreon page. Info below in the description of
you paid for
either the audio or the YouTubes. But you can check it out and see what supporting the show looks like. Again, now that we're putting more effort into YouTube, that means that we don't have YouTube videos accruing ad money. So patron support would be awesome. But also, what's also awesome is just sharing it and letting people know you like it. That gets more listeners and all that good stuff. And so, but thank you for however you consume this, whether it's in your ears, in your eyes, whatever. Want you guys to be sure to go check out our friends at Red5Network. They're awesome people. You can also check out Game Infinite. Both of them are very active and on Twitter, and you can find all the other links to them through there. But they're awesome people who can fill your timeline with awesome stuff, and we are just glad to be friends with them. They're cool.
Yeah.
Also, I haven't been doing it. I'm going to say me and a buddy have a side project podcast called 4 Starters. Check it out.
Yeah, our friend Justice.
It's short term. It's basically we ask each other a question and then talk about it, and they're interesting questions, and that means we'd be interested what people have to say about it. So 4 Starters, you can find us at 4 Starters Cast on Twitter. Haven't been plugging that, but why not?
Yeah, I also have a new podcast. It's me staring into a microphone for 3 hours and you reading my thoughts. That was a taste.
That was a good one. So we will see you guys next time, and until next time, bye.
Wait a minute. You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.